Welcome to another Chat and Learn here with PowerToFly. My name is Mariella, and I'm excited to roll into this next hour with you. One of my favorite speakers here is here to join us. She's done a bunch of Chat and Learns here with with PowerToFly, and she also runs our mentorship program with PowerToFly. So I know that you all are going to learn a lot, and I invite you all to hop off of mute, turn your cameras on, so that we can really maximize this next hour. I'll just go over some housekeeping rules before I pass the mic to our guest speaker. So I've muted everyone upon entrance just to avoid any background noise. But again, I can't stress, if you've been on a Chat and Learn before, I can't stress enough, we want to hear from you. We believe in visibility. We want to lift your voice. So turn your cameras on if you feel called to do so. Come off of mute whenever you want, or you can write in the chat box whenever you want as well, and I'll flag that to our speaker. If you have any sensitive information and you want to be kept anonymous, feel free to find me in the chat box under Mariella, and I will raise your question or your response to our guest speaker. Hi, Elisa. Thank you for turning your camera on. I see you. Hi, Chelsea. Thank you so much. And the last thing that I'll say is this is being recorded. So if you come off of mute, you will be featured in our video. And then I know that we live in a world where everyone is multitasking, but I would love for you to be present with us for this next hour so that you can voice your opinion. And then later you can rewatch this video on PowerToFly and you can take notes there. The last thing that I'll say is we would love if you follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can keep up with all of the great Chat and Learns that we've got lined up for the next week. Without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic to our guest speaker. Limor, tell us a little bit about yourself. And of course, you can explain what you do here with PowerToFly and what you're excited to share with us today.
Absolutely. Hi. Thank you, Mariella, so much. And hi, everyone. I'm very, very excited to be here. So a little bit about me. So my name is Limor, and my background is engineering. So I started as a software engineer and then realized I wanted to, go into leadership position. I started as an engineering manager and grew to be a director of engineering. I live in Israel right now, but actually I returned back in last December, after spending 9 years in the United States. We lived in Colorado for 6.5 years in the Denver metro area. And then we moved to Texas, to Plano, Texas, which is north of Dallas. And we decided, which was one of the hardest decisions of my life, we decided to go back to our home country without any clue of what we're going to do. I mean, professionally. I left my job at DigitalOcean and moved back. And I was fortunate, because I know PowerToFly for a while back as a client, and I was fortunate really to have this extraordinary opportunity to work with PowerToFly and create this mentorship program. And today I wanted to talk to you about breaking your own glass ceiling, because throughout my life and career, I found out that I'm the one that is limiting myself the most. And on the other side, I'm the one who has the power to change my life from every possible angle you can think of. And I'm happy to share examples for both personal and professional life, because it doesn't only touch the professional life. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation today with you.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Limor. Well, this hour is going to fly by so quickly. So I just want to say I'm going to sound like a broken record throughout this chat, because you all have submitted some great questions offline. And I would love if you can hop off of mute or write in the chat box. If you see your question pop up on screen, feel free to, ask Limor to dive deeper. If this wasn't your question that pops up on the screen and you have something like that you dreamt of last night and you want to add your 2 cents, again, I can't stress enough, we want to hear from you. So we'll start with this first question here. And again, Limor, I love that you say that you're going to share, some professional and personal, because we often say you can't talk about the professional without talking about the personal. So let's start with this first question here. How do I overcome my self-limiting beliefs? I know this is a big question, but where's a good place to start?
Yeah. So first of all, the best place to start is identifying you have a limiting beliefs, because many of us run on autopilot. And typically our subconscious is basically limiting us. It's stopping us from doing things we want. So it starts with basically asking yourself, I'm not saying you have to do it every single day, but trying to dive deeper into your desires, into the things you really want from yourself. What do I really want to be? What are the things I'm passionate about? How do I want to become? and then realize like, why am I not there? For example, and I'll go into examples, right? I was very unhappy with my physical condition, and I was not in shape at all because I have 4 kids. And when we moved to the United States, my kids were basically, my oldest was 6.5, and my youngest were twins, 7-month old. So through the first years in the United States, I was really busy working full time, and I didn't have time to take care of myself. And gradually, I realized I really wasn't happy. But then I asked myself, okay, if I'm not happy with myself, why don't I change that? And when I was thinking, really asking all those questions to myself, I realized really I didn't believe it's possible. I know it sounds stupid, but this is really, what was stopping me. I said, well, I'm over 40. It's impossible to lose weight because, metabolism goes down, blah, blah, blah. And I cannot run. I wanted to start running. I cannot really run. I'm too old. And then I started saying like, okay, is it really true? I mean, is it really true? And then I was like, well, cannot be true because obviously you see, people, changing their lifestyle. People are doing running marathon that are like over 60. So I started like breaking those paradigms, like looking for proof that it is possible. It's not that hard to find, with this example. And then I started really, it was like an exercise that I did to myself, saying it is possible. I can do it. Even putting like post-it notes on my screen, like I can run. I know it sounds stupid, but I was really trying to emphasize, like to practice in my mind that what I'm saying I cannot do in my subconscious, it's actually possible for me. So I know it's a long, kind of a long answer to this question.
Absolutely. I mean, and I would love for you to actually dive in deeper because I feel like you are not alone in that. I often find that breaking habits or finding the habits to break in order to, let's say reinvent ourselves or to turn over a new leaf or just to open a new chapter, it's really difficult. And whether it be, I want to run more and I feel like I can't, or I want a career pivot and I feel like I can't, or I want to speak up more and I feel like I can't. There's so many ways. So actually, I don't think that what you're saying is stupid at all. I think that on the other side, the way that we are self-limiting ourselves, the way that we've been taught actually through education or through the different ways that the system supports self-limiting beliefs, I think that that's actually the stupid part. if I can reframe that, the way of seeing that. So we have a question here in the chat box. Were you ever a runner in the past, or was this brand new?
So I was not a runner. Actually, I am in nature a couch potato. I was never really athletic. I hated sports. Right now I have an injury, so I don't run, but I exercise every single day, although the gyms are closed here. So I was not a runner. And that's what I think, maybe that's why it was so hard for me to believe it is even possible for me to do that. And once I started doing that, it took me some time to get into running. I looked for, okay, how can I actually start running? There are obviously multiple options. I decided to go with like installing an app on my phone that trains you, but obviously you can join a running group, you can join the gym. There are multiple ways, when you figure out what you want to do and you understand that it's possible for you, then you go into action. You start asking, okay, what do I need to do in order to get there, right? Sometimes you can do things yourself. Sometimes you need a support, either a support group. Sometimes you need someone to train you. It depends obviously on the situation.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's move on to this next question here.
Yeah.
Again, if you're joining us and you want to add to this, or you have a question for Limor, feel free to write in the chat box, or you can come off of mute. So actually, Miranda writes, running is a tough one. I started this year and I found some guided runs that made all the difference if anyone else happens to have this goal. Awesome. Okay, so let's move on to this next question here. What are the most efficient strategies for truly conquering self-limiting beliefs?
So the strategies that worked for me is really question, when basically what happens is when I'm not happy with something, it starts with being unhappy. I don't know if unhappy is the right word, but not satisfied with where I am. It can be, I'm not happy with my current job. I'm not happy with what I'm doing. I'm not happy with, my health. I'm not happy, with whatever it may be. It starts with discontent of a situation, then you ask yourself, I think that the strategy that worked best for me was to really do a deep work with myself and asking myself questions. Why? Why am I unhappy? Why am I in this situation? And what are the possibilities? Even, I went back even to situations like, for example, with the work with PowerToFly. I always thought that the only way for me to make a living is to work for a company, like being a full-time and working full-time. And when I, was asking myself, why is that so? I realized that it really comes from where, my family. And not saying anything bad about being, a full-time employee, but I realized when I returned back to Israel that that's not what I wanted. And I actually started as a consultant for PowerToFly. So I really try to figure out, okay, why? So asking a lot of questions and trying to dig really deep, because typically, on the surface, you don't find the answers you have to find. And then I started digging. Why is that so? And I realized that, yeah, where I come from, my family, my friends, everyone is like working full time. My parents keep asking, what are you going to do? Where are you going to work? Have you started looking for a job? And I realized like my whole system around me is like, that's what they expect of me. That's what they know. And then I started to figure out, okay, I really have a limiting belief that I think that the only way I can make a living is to work full time for someone. And I realized, well, maybe now it's time to change that. And that's how I started like working with PowerToFly. I started creating my online LinkedIn training. I started doing other things, and I realized I have to start doing in order to really conquer my fears.
And I love that you're able to open up these new ways of living your life, essentially by asking yourself questions and not depending on anyone else to give you those answers. So like coming within, I love that oftentimes on these chat and learns, when we have these big questions like, how can I discover my true gifts? It always comes back to yourself. I think that we live in a time where we expect for an easy button, this will end racism, or this will end your life's problems, like an easy push of a button. And that is, it doesn't happen. It's unrealistic. So I love that you're able to say, let's self-reflect. And of course, it's going to take some time, and then you have to be proactive and you have to start moving things in order to see those results.
I just want to mention, basically, just to finish the previous question, another strategy I took is writing down the limiting beliefs and like writing down to me why I think it's possible actually to do other things. Like, for example, in this example I gave, like working full time versus how can I make a living, even brainstorming myself, okay, what can I do? And then even putting, as I said, a post-it notes, like you have to constantly train your subconscious that it is possible for you. And when you iterate that to yourself again and again and again, and look for examples and reading about inspiring people and look for what else other people are doing, then you start kind of getting into believing that it is possible.
Absolutely. And this is why I love reminding our live callers that we believe in visibility, and visibility is key, because just what you say, if you can look and research and see that something is possible, maybe that gives you a little more confidence to pursue it on your own, versus if you don't see any, a woman in that position, or a woman doing something, or someone who looks like you essentially put in the public face that you can see, then maybe you have to really dive even deeper to create that, because you don't see that represented. So again, that's also why I ask folks to turn their cameras on, so that we can see, okay, there are women and different kinds of people that are interested in this topic, for example, and I'm not alone. The fact that some of you have turned your cameras on right now shows that, we are not alone in this question. This, this is actually a great transition into this next question. Why are there so many people that have self-limiting beliefs? Why do you think it's so prevalent anymore?
Yeah, I think that because all of us are born into a specific environment. And if you think about this many times, like you see, well, doctors, their family, we have a good friend who is a doctor, and his father was a doctor. So typically, like, we are born into a specific environment and we absorb a lot of things. Many of those are good things, but some of them can be good for some people, but not for us. And we just absorb all those things. Like in my situation, it was about like, I was born into a middle class family that, believed in having a job, having education, and so forth. So, I mean, it's not bad. I got an education. I got to where I am today thanks to my family. But on the other hand, I realized at some point, yeah, I can do other things. So I think that a lot of it comes to where we come from. It comes to society and how society thinks of us. It comes from the school system. For example, in schools, I remember that they talk with the kids about getting a college degree, about like they implant how our life should be from even from school. And again, some people were born to be employees, but some people were born to be something different. We're born to be entrepreneurs. We're born to invent a new thing. And I feel like, for example, the school system is kind of teaching all of us how to be employees. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it may not be good for everyone. So it's all from our surrounding, from people we spend time with our family, with our the whole system around us.
So I have a question just to follow up there, because I agree 1,000% with what you're saying. So let's say that someone is in a situation right now, and especially right now, the global state of COVID and the pandemic. If they are surrounded with, folks or a specific job that is reinforcing these self-limiting beliefs, can you give them one piece of advice right now to take away so they can maybe start to lift that off of themselves and maybe discover what it is that they want to do inside, and not depend on the outside stimulation of expectation, essentially?
Yeah, I think that I would recommend finding an inspiration. And for me, for example, I can give you an example. I don't know. It's funny, but in one of my visits, when I still lived in the U.S., in one of my visits, we went to my in-laws, and my mother-in-law gave me a book, and this book was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And it's funny to me because my mother-in-law is like the last person I would expect to give me such a book. But for example, this book, and it was like completely coincidental, and this book completely changed my paradigms about like I mentioned about how to make money and whether you need to have a full-time job or do other things and so forth. So find an inspiration. It can be look for TED Talks, reading books, educate yourself. Try to kind of change your environment. Whether you can meet people that are different than you. Now we cannot really go to a lot of the events, but trying to connect with different people, because usually we are surrounding ourselves with people that are very similar to us. So try to kind of break that and meet different people, read books, watch anything that can kind of change how you think about things.
And we were speaking a little offline just about limiting our screen time. I feel like that could be, I mean, at least it's helped for me. And I hope that, we could speak a little bit more about this just briefly, but if we are tied to our screen and we're constantly seeing, if the algorithm is showing what we might like or who, we are looking up to, I think that limiting our screen time could take us away from that. And I think I would love to hear your opinion on how that is incorporated with maybe self-limiting beliefs. Let's say there's this, I don't remember the exact expression, but you only see like the happy parts of people on social media, right? So how that can aid on the self-limiting perspective of like everyone is happy or everyone looks like they're having the best time in this crazy time. It's like if we limit the screen time, we can see that maybe that's not for us, let's say, and that's actually irresponsible to think that could be the case. Yeah. I'd love to hear your opinion on screen time and self-limiting beliefs.
Well, I think that screen time, the problem with it is that we basically we all have the same amount of hours a day and the same amount of days per week. And we choose how to spend that time, including me. So there are some weeks I'm spending tons of time watching TV, watching the news, and some weeks I'm better with it. I think that the problem with, being constantly passive, like constantly getting content fed to us, is that we are not really being proactive about what we want in life, the things that interest us, the things that we want to learn, and the things that we want to do. We're more passive, and we consume things that not necessarily are good for us. And it's either just, just junk. Like it's like someone called it brain candy. I don't remember who, but it's like watching stuff that makes us feel good for a moment, or just, I don't know, to pass the time. And I love social media, but the thing is that you can really sink in and spend hours, and you don't really advance yourself at all. So if I want to do something different with my life, I want to advance myself, then I need to be more proactive with my time management and figure out, okay, what are the things that I'm missing? It can be learning something new. It can be networking. It can be, I don't know, whatever, watching. It can be actually watching some content, but a content that I choose to watch because I feel like it's going to help me grow. It can be, as I said, reading a book, anything that can really help me get to where I want to. And if I'm just passively, on social media, I'm just passively consuming content that is not necessarily helping me move the needle.
Absolutely. And I'd love to just ask our live callers, where are you all on your journey of self-limiting beliefs and breaking them? Are you currently, actually, I'll just let you all answer it yourself. I don't want to probe you, but I would love to know where you are in your journey so that we can dive deeper into some of these questions. You can talk about, screen time. You can talk about, how society or education or work might be aiding your self-limiting beliefs. If anyone has any tips and tricks, we'd love to hear from you as well. In the meantime, so go ahead and write that in the chat box, everyone. In the meantime, let's move on to this question, Limor. So how can I identify the notions that could potentially hold me back?
I need some help with English. What does it mean, the notions that could potentially hold me back?
Yeah, so if this was your question that you submitted and you see it on the screen, if you all want to hop in, that would be great. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and try to explain your question. So how can I identify the notions that could potentially hold me back? So what I get from this question is, how can someone be ahead of something that might stimulate self-limiting beliefs? So we talked about, workplace or society or things like that. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for helping me. Sometimes, like with the English, it's hard for me to understand what exactly they meant. Mm-hmm. I think it started with, first of all, as I said, like if you're usually, for me, it started with a place of being this, not content. Doesn't have to be miserable or sad or, depressed, but it started with some discontent with who I am, what I'm doing, where I am with my career or my personal life, and then really, trying to figure out how to break from that. What can help is to trying to break out of our routine and meet people outside of our circle. A lot of time, people we surround ourselves with are people that are not helping us, sometimes even hurting us. Now, I can tell you very honestly that my mom can sometimes drive me crazy, but I still love her and I still want to be around her. So I'm not saying to you, don't see your parents, but some people, like, friendships, we can choose if we feel like people around us are not helping us, or maybe even putting us down. We need to choose people who can help us get to where we want, people who can encourage us, people who can maybe push us a little bit to do things that are uncomfortable. Because the process of growing or getting to where you want is typically uncomfortable. You need to do things that you're not feeling comfortable with. Like, for example, today I did a short live just promoting this talk. Like, I used to be terrified from being in front of the camera, and I forced myself like 6 months ago or something, like, to apply to LinkedIn Live. And occasionally, I'm not doing it a lot, but like, when you grow, you need to constantly push yourself out of your comfort zone. So you need to surround yourself with people who can really support you, and people who can give you confidence that you can do the things you want.
Absolutely. So we've got some folks writing in the chat box. I'm going to flag that in just one second. I do have a private message that I'd love for you to talk about. So you spoke a little bit about family, and also like choosing the people around you to make sure that they support what you are envisioning. So a private message here. What about if you have a family that's toxic, or family members that are adding, toxicity to your life?
Yeah, this is a tough one because, all of us have family members that some of them are, I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm not saying a lot of time they're not doing something to hurt us, but the way it is. Try to really, so what I do is, I don't have toxic, but I have like maybe annoying, but really try to explain, first of all, if you can, it depends what kind of level of if this is your spouse, obviously you see them every day, but if it's someone you're not very close to, maybe try to kind of see them less or be less surrounded with them if it is possible. And if not, then try to first in your head, like, be prepared and think, okay, when this person is going to talk about this, a lot of time it takes two to tango. So if someone is saying something we don't like, then we start responding. Sometimes we get heated. So try to kind of prepare yourself to, I'm not going to respond. If this person start talking about a topic that they don't like, I'm either not going to respond and I'm going to say, really, I don't want to talk about it right now. Like in a polite way. Try to kind of avoid conversations you don't want to have that you know where they're going to take you. And like, again, I'm sharing personal stories here, but like when I got back to Israel, like my mom was constantly pushing me, okay, did you find a job? Are you looking for a job? And I told her, Mom, really, I don't want a full-time job right now. It's not what is right for me. And she kept asking me. And you know what I said? Eventually I told her, listen, you have to respect my wish. I understand you want the best for me, but really it's like, it's exhausting for me every time to talk about it. So you can be candid. It depends obviously on the person. If this person, is not really receptive, try to kind of limit yourself in your reaction. If we don't react, if we don't engage, it will stop there. The problem is that a lot of time with toxic people, they start something, we're like heated up and we start responding, and that's kind of leading to unpleasant conversations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that, Limor. I'm going to flag some more questions and comments that we have here in the chat box. So Elisa writes, I find my self-limiting beliefs are stronger when I'm feeling exhausted emotionally and physically. Did you want to speak about that a little, Limor?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So again, I'll give examples because I usually like, I like just to be very specific. So when I moved to the United States, I moved with 4 young kids, and I left my job in Israel, and I moved to Colorado, to Denver, Colorado. I didn't know a single soul, and I wanted to work as an engineering manager. I was terrified. I didn't know where to start. And for the first few months, I didn't really find any job, and I was very, very depressed. And my confidence was really very low, very low. I didn't even believe I can find, I thought maybe I need to do something different. Maybe I need to go back and writing code and so forth. So what I did, I said, okay, I need to take a break. I went skiing. I said to my husband, let's go skiing. So sometimes you just need, if you're in a bad place, sometimes you need to do something good for yourself. We cannot be like constantly, exhausting ourselves. You need to kind of step back. You need to recharge and then go back and, doing what you need to do. That's what is helping me.
Yes, yes. Giving yourself space to think and move things around your mind, and to also connect with your new home, in that case, that you just moved literally across the world, and you put all the pressure on top of yourself with all the voices in your head from your mom or from the society saying this is what should happen. We have a question here about imposter syndrome. So how do you get over imposter syndrome when looking for a new job or promotion?
Yeah, so luckily I have a super supportive husband that really encourage me all the time. And find people who really help you. who really help you boost your confidence. And to be honest, I'm almost 47 years old. So from my age, I got enough confidence in myself that I didn't have 20 years ago. So in general, I'm pretty confident in myself, but I also have a spouse that is super supportive. And every time I want to do something, we talk a lot about this, and it gives me a lot of confidence. So find those people who really help you believe in yourself when you don't. Like, for example, when I was looking for a job for my first time I became an engineering manager was actually thanks to my husband, who was pushing me to apply. So you need a sounding board. You need people who support you. It could be peers from work. It could be a good friend. It could be a spouse. It could be another family member. It could be a son or daughter, whatever it may be. Find those people that you trust, that you like, that you appreciate in your life, and that they really can help you when you're down, when you are low, that can give you the confidence boost that you need.
Absolutely. And as you all know, if you've joined these chat and learns before where I've hosted, I like to put things into practice now. So if you are here live with us, if you want to write in the chat box your LinkedIn or whatever your preferred way of connecting, so that we can start to take these conversations offline, and maybe you can find some support, among the women and people who are joining us live. So I know that a lot of us aren't fortunate enough to have a big group of friends or family with us or near, or maybe with, a stable Wi-Fi connection so we can have these dialogues. So I invite everyone to write in the chat box their preferred way of connecting, so that we can take these conversations offline and maybe start to support each other there. In the meantime, I'm going to read some things you all have written in the chat box here. So Miranda writes, I also think limiting beliefs are often protective. If we can't try, we can't fail. Screen time might also expose us to everyone else's success, in quotation marks, which makes us less confident. Do you want to chime in on that, Limor, from Miranda?
Yeah, Miranda, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, all of us, unfortunately, I mean, society also makes us afraid of failure, right? Failure is considered a bad thing. It starts from school. Think about it. Like in school, when you get a bad grade, it's a bad thing. You're concerned about what your parents are going to say. So it started at a very low age, unfortunately. And a lot of times in the workplace also, I worked in many places that failure was not an option, right? If you failed, it was a bad thing, which I believe completely the opposite. As long as failure is a learning, and if you do the same failure over and over again, it is a failure. If you do a failure and you learn from that, that's not a failure. It's just a stepping stone. And the best advice I can give is that you need to do something uncomfortable all the time. I'm not saying every day, every hour. It depends on you, how much you can bear it emotionally. But if you're comfortable all the time, it's not a good thing. You constantly need to push yourself a little bit beyond like I mentioned with LinkedIn Live, like I was not comfortable doing that. Now I feel more comfortable. So, okay, what's my next step? Maybe, I don't know, maybe doing a webinar, maybe talking to more people. I don't know, whatever it may be for you. Constantly try to do something a little bit uncomfortable.
Absolutely. I agree. Full-fledged. And I remember when we had our first chat and learn last year, Limor, and you were saying that you love to write and that you were thinking of starting a blog, and then she did it, everyone. So I've seen Limor put her things into practice, and I've seen her, develop and blossom even more, in this short amount of time that I've known her. And I can't imagine, in your whole journey, the little things that you've been sharing with us. And thank you also for being authentic and vulnerable and sharing these stories, Limor. Speaking of being vulnerable, we've got a couple folks writing in the chat box about a very real situation here going on with COVID. So we've got some folks who have lost work because of the pandemic. So I'm just going to read some things that they're speaking about here. So I'm actively trying to boost my self-confidence. I've been looking for a job for months, and it can be really detrimental to feeling adequate because of the rejections. Sometimes I need to take a break and really remind myself everything I already accomplished professionally. And then Chelsea writes, I'm in a similar boat to Severine, who just spoke above. Lost my job due to the pandemic, have been looking for months, but also wanting to transition into a new career. And I'm feeling intimidated by this, especially as it's a completely new area. Any tips on how to find motivation?
Yeah, so I think that on the job search, I mean, obviously, I know how you feel because I've been there. It's being on a job search is not an easy. It's hard for everyone, even more so when you lost your job. So you feel like, oh, maybe I'm not worth it. Why was I let go? Um, I think trying to realize, okay, I've been looking for X amount of months and trying to ask yourself why it was not working. It could be that because there are just not many jobs or too many people applying, but it could be that you can do things differently. Try to ask yourself, okay, what can I do differently this time? Because I'll give you an example. When I started looking for jobs, again, it was a while back, I was applying on the company websites for jobs, and it wasn't really working for me. And only when I realized that I really need to invest in making connections, in trying to find referrals, then I started landing my first job, and then I really worked on my LinkedIn and my visibility, and then jobs started reaching out to me. So try to ask yourself, like, what can you do differently than what have you done so far? And maybe some things that you can do differently will help you. And like, I don't know, it could be joining some meetups, it could be joining a LinkedIn group, it could be trying to connect with people, it could be asking for recommendations, it could be connecting with new people, and applying for jobs only through people you know. I don't know. It could be multiple things, but try to maybe do things differently. Um, Maybe it will be good for you to try to meet with people you respect, and that you think that they respect you from your previous job or jobs, and try to kind of get some advice from them. Maybe try to ask them, okay, what they think you're good at, so they can give you a boost of confidence, and also some things you haven't thought about. Because a lot of times we are so how would they say that, we're so hard on ourselves, and we don't appreciate ourselves enough. And someone from the outside who work with us can say, wow, you're really good at working, I don't know, what's customers, you're really good with people, you're really good with XYZ, and kind of can give us confidence, but also to open our minds of what we're really good at and what we can do.
Absolutely. And Limor, I'd love for you, because I'm just curious to hear more about mentorship opportunities and how those can potentially, help us find people who give us inspiration, or if we are the ones who are the mentors, how we can find inspiration from mentoring other folks. Is there a way that we can connect mentoring or mentorships with getting past self-limiting beliefs and maybe finding inspiration?
I mean, obviously, we have our own mentorship program. So we typically, what we do, we connect women with like-minded women, but more advanced in their careers, so they can give each other inspiration and advices. I mean, it goes both ways, by the way. Not just the mentors are the ones. I mentor myself for many years, so I learn a lot from people I mentor, and they learn from me. So obviously, mentorship is one way. I mean, we have our own mentorship program, or you can find people that you worked with, or in your current workplace, people typically that you really think highly of, that inspires you. And like my first mentor was actually a previous manager that helped me grow as a manager myself. So those people can really help you get to the next level.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And I see that folks are writing in the chat box and dropping their LinkedIn. So thank you for that. And I really encourage everyone to, after we finish this call, at least reach out to a couple folks here who have joined today and who are sharing their ways of connecting. Because again, maybe this is someone stepping outside of their comfort zone and sharing their profile, right? So let's support each other there. In the meantime, let's move on to this next question. So how do I know the difference between a self-limiting belief and something that I actually need to work on?
Something that I actually need to work on. I mean, that's a tricky question. typically a self-limiting belief is something that is created from, really feeling that I'm not capable of doing something. That for me, it was like, I cannot find a job as a manager, whatever. I cannot run, I cannot lose weight. So obviously, when I searched and I realized that I actually can do it, I started working on it. And and typically, a limiting belief is something that we do need to work on. I mean, because it's limiting us. So, in order to get past that level, I mean, it will be easier for me to talk if this person actually sent me like a specific example. But typically, a limiting belief is limiting us from getting to the next level. And in order to get there, we need to do some work. Like
Yes,
it
and
could be. Yeah,
yes,
go ahead.
they've written to me privately just to clarify this
Yeah.
question. So as in I am not, as in I'm telling myself I'm not good enough versus I'm actually not good at it. So maybe that sounds like a little bit of imposter syndrome,
Yeah,
actually.
that's helping. So, first of all, it could be that we're not good at something, right? Not all of this is imposter syndrome. For me, the best way to identify the things I really need to work on, like the things that I'm not that good at, is to ask for feedback. And ask feedback from people I trust, people that work with me, my direct manager. Like when I joined DigitalOcean and wanted to become a director of engineering, and I was like, I think I was driving my manager crazy because I was asking him all the time, like, okay, tell me what are the things I need to do in order to become a director? Like, what am I missing? And uh, and basically, we worked about it like for a while, but he gave me a list of things that he gave me feedback about the areas he felt I needed to work on. So I think the feedback is the best way for you to really understand what are the things that you need to do better. And sometimes if you fail at something, like if you do something and fail, that's another indication that you just need to learn from it and improve for the next time.
Absolutely. And I remember learning about keeping a brag folder of things that you have done well so that you can remind yourself anytime someone gives you feedback throughout time, like keep it as a rolling resource. So you've done great on this interview, you've done great, with this project. Archive that so that if you do forget one day, or if you think maybe you're not good at it or not, you can actually look at the feedback that has been given to you. And I love that. I do that in my work as well, just because life happens and we forget how great we are at some things. And maybe, if we fail at some things, how that's the failure isn't the end. What do we learn from that? I love that you're posing that question, Limor. So thank you for that. So I have another private question here. How do we know if feedback is valuable?
How do we know if feedback is valuable? Feedback has to be emotion free. So I value feedback, first of all, from people I trust. And trust is something that it takes typically some time to gain, right? With people that you work with. And I'm talking about the workplace, right? And if a feedback is very, something that involving emotions, it's not a good feedback. Feedback needs to be emotionless. It has to be specific. It has to provide some examples. Needs to be something you can understand, and not just like, oh, I felt you were like whatever. It needs to be very specific for me to understand. Trying to think what kind of an example I can give here. Um,
Well, as you're thinking, Limor, I have another private message just to
yeah.
continue on. I feel like we get a lot of messages saying get feedback, but not always has our best interest in mind. That can be hard to filter out if you're just starting off in your career. So I guess, if people are wanting to get feedback or wanting or asking for feedback, let's say, and there's just kind of an overwhelming need for feedback. And so how do you sift through when it's appropriate or not and how to give that feedback?
I mean, if you are new, I think you want to learn and grow as much as possible. But on the other hand, you don't want to be overwhelmed with too many things. So find one person that you trust. Let's say you're a new software engineer and you join a team. So find an experienced engineer you trust and have them, mentor you, have them work with you closely and get guidance from them and try to kind of remove all the background noise. So just work with one person that can help you, depending obviously on the situation. Typically, your manager is the one that should help you the most, but not always it's the case. So find another person, if it's not your manager, that can really help you and give you, feedback that is really helpful for you, that you can do something about.
Absolutely. And maybe a follow-up question for this person who might be confused about how to move forward with feedback is determine if it's how you can make it useful for you in order to grow and reach your goals, right? So I love that you said to calm down the background noise. And I know that we're a proactive workforce, productivity. We have all these apps on productivity and, the calendar rules the day. So how do we make sure that the feedback that we're receiving is allowing us to grow and break self-limiting beliefs and all of that? And so you're not wasting time or you're not working on things that have nothing to do with where you're trying to go. So I hope that helps out for the folks who are writing me privately there. Let's move on to this next question here. And I just also want to say we've got about 10 minutes left. So if you haven't had a chance to write into the chat box or to take yourselves off of mute, now is your time to shine. If this is your question that you see coming up, please feel free to unmute yourselves and we can dive in deeper here. So Limor, let's move on to this next question.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I am capable of achieving success, but my lack of self-confidence holds me back. What can I do to bolster my self-confidence?
I think we talked about it already, right? Surround yourself with people who help you. In this case, I mean, you can get a mentor or you can get someone you trust that can really help you and get more confidence. So
What
it
I like
depends.
yes, I was going to say that there are a lot of, from what I see in the past year, I would say, a lot of mindset coaches that are coming out of the woodworks these days, right? And they have their particular way of focusing and challenging the people that they work with. So I know that I got a mindset coach for myself at the beginning of this pandemic, and I'm so grateful to her. Just because sometimes it takes coming out of our own minds, and seeing things from a different perspective, again, from someone we trust, and just to help us navigate these murky waters and all of the uncertainty that's going on. So I love that you're directing us to find mentorship opportunities, to open our circle as far as people that surround us and that inspire us and support us. And then I would also throw one in there if anyone is interested in researching mindset coaches as well. It's definitely worked for me. All right, let's move on to this next question. So how do you remove the fear that may not live up to the expectations, although you are actually capable of doing it?
I mean, I learned to live with fear. I don't know if you can remove a fear. Because the thing is, as I said, like growing, when you grow, you need to be uncomfortable, not terrified. You need to find the middle ground between being super comfortable to terrified. You need to be a little bit uncomfortable. And when you're uncomfortable, sometimes you're afraid of doing things. Feel like you need to kind of learn to accept the fact that yes, despite being afraid, I'm still doing something. I'm doing a step towards the next level. I'm taking a step. It can be, for example, like I had a person that was really hard for me to work with. And I knew that I had to have an unpleasant conversation. I was very afraid of this, but I decided to do it regardless of my fear. So I don't know if I would say try to remove the fear, but try to acknowledge it, but set yourself some goals. Okay, I am doing it. I know I'm afraid, but I'm capable of doing it. And this is the goal I set to myself, to have this conversation or to do X, Y, Z.
Absolutely. Goal setting, right? And making sure that like having an accountability partner, or either holding the accountability within yourself to make sure that you are making forward motion. There's so much going on and we can get lost in the sauce, and as far as setting expectations for ourselves and then not meeting them, that just adds to the self-limiting beliefs and we go deeper into the dark. So I love that you're making sure that you put goals, make sure you're going towards those goals and surrounding yourself with people who can support those goals. Okay, so let's move on to this next question here. How to cope with feeling unqualified when looking at the job posting, but knowing that you could actually do the role. So again, this is kind of echoing some of the same questions. And I see that we're all nodding. It seems like we're going through these things now. So, again, if this is your question or you want to dive in deeper here, feel free to come off mute or write in the chat box. But Limor, I would love to hear your response on this.
Yeah, so I want to say something about job posting. Typically, and I'm saying that from my personal experience as someone who hired people, both managers and engineers. Typically, when I used to post a job, there was no person on earth that could check all the boxes. Typically, when people put a job posting, they put like their ultimate desire person, like this perfect person who have all the qualifications for this position. Typically, no one like that exists. So acknowledge that you have some strength, but you may not tick all the boxes. It's okay. Apply regardless. And I know that there are statistics about men and women and how men typically apply to positions even if they feel like 50% of the qualifications, and women don't apply if they don't feel like they can fill 100% of the qualifications. So work on yourself to really apply, even if you feel like you can do this job, even if you don't have all the things that they are listed there. It's okay.
Absolutely. We've got a follow-up question here from Kaya. What about those of us who aren't in our 20s and 30s and have the education and experience, but the environment with working abroad or online work seems to be more attracted to millennials?
Those, I'm trying to understand the questions. Have the education, but the environment with working abroad.
And feel free to come off mute if you want to explain your question a little more.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So from what I can understand as well, let's see, I guess she's speaking about job postings and what if the language seems to be more attractive to millennials when she is not a millennial?
So if you feel like you have your own, experience, and Kaya, feel free to reach out. I mean, we'll try to help. But I mean, I feel like if you feel like you're a fit for the job, you should try regardless. The worst case is that either no one will respond to you or they say no. Again, I don't know the specific situation, but you need to figure out, okay, looking for a job, okay, what are my strengths and how can I highlight them?
Absolutely. I've got a private message here. Someone is curious to know, how can we get involved in the mentorship program?
Yeah, depending how you want to be involved, we're looking, even whether you want to become a mentor or you want to mentor for yourself, you can just go to our mentorship page, and Mariela, if you can put the link there, and we'll be happy to talk with you and answer any questions, depending again on what you're interested in.
Absolutely. Great. Okay, so let's see if Nicole can drop that link in just a minute, because we've got about 5 minutes left and I want to get to one more question and then see if anyone wants to hop off of mute. So in the meantime, if you have not had a chance to voice your question, feel free to use this time for the chat box. So let's move on to this one here. Do you have any advice for someone looking to change careers or switch industries? And, with the current state of affairs that are happening now with COVID?
Yeah, I think that it will be good for you to connect with people at the industry, or people that are in the field that you want to get into. Start connecting. Try to understand, what are the things that they do, and realize basically where is the gap, And how do you fill that gap? It will not be easy to find a job today with, if you're switching and you don't have any experience, unless you have some strengths or some experiences you already gained that can help. So it's finding some connections, trying to learn, and maybe finding some volunteering or internship opportunities to kind of get your foot into the door. That's kind of what I can think of right now.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Mariella, one of the things that I can pop in, sorry, I was just going to help with this question, was
Yeah,
I changed careers about 5 years ago, and I am in my late 40s. So I was in my 40s when I did it. I switched from finance to HR, and it's really getting involved in the local, you have so many local affinity groups and associations. Also leverage going back to your colleges and universities and any other of your contacts that you have from there, because they can often help you with that. And one of the things that I don't think has really been mentioned, Limor, you had mentioned it early, is I'm a big proponent of contract work. Is take a contract, because that gives you the experience. And that's how I leveraged getting back into a company that I was laid off from, to did contract work from them in HR, and then got a permanent job through them, then got laid off again because of COVID. But that's but I just wanted to throw that out there, because I know it's come up a couple of times. So sorry.
Great. Thank you for that. No, and don't say sorry. We appreciate you sharing your journey and your resources. Did you want to chime in on anything there, Limor? We also have 2 more minutes. So actually I'm going to pass the mic to you, Limor. Leave us with any food for thought, any words of encouragement, so that we can leave this call and move into the rest of the day, the rest of the week, the rest of our lives, letting go of self-limiting beliefs and learning, how we can really dive into what we are here to do, essentially, and discover that if we don't know what it is. So I'll pass the mic to you, Limor.
Yeah, I mean, I would end by saying that work on yourself every single day. Try to stretch your limits, do something for your soul, something that makes you feel good, not just busy work, because we're all doing busy work both at home and at work. So invest in yourself. Try to do something you love, whether it's a physical activity, it's a hobby, it's, I don't know, getting outside for a walk, doing something, because we need to also nurture our souls. We cannot just be constantly pressured. And
Absolutely.
surround yourselves with people who can lift you up.
Absolutely. And that is a big notion. So I'm so happy that you're ending with that, because we are isolated these days. And so how do we do that? So I think we have to find creative ways. And like you said, find ways to get a little uncomfortable, and then finding our comfort within that as well, so we can break habits and see, how we can trailblaze, essentially, and shed these self-limiting beliefs that society throws on us. So I encourage everyone, as Limor, to find what makes you shine and share that, because that's what we need more than ever. And Limor, how can we connect with you after this chat?
Yeah, I think I shared my LinkedIn here. I can share it again. Feel free to connect, and I'll be happy to help you if I can.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So everyone, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next